it's still.
You need a pillow.
I'm good. All right, this is going to be great. Here we go.
I'm gonna grab a pillow.
For some reason, it's giving like a 5-minute countdown. Oh, no, it's probably just the... All right. I'm seeing Jim's lovely visage.
Okay, so now. How's it looking?
Looks good.
I love my used old Stetson.
That's incredible.
This is a vintage with the high crown, which I need for my high crown.
All right, so we can have Jim go into the green room.
All right, Jim, you could mute audio and video, and you'll hear us, and then we'll have you join us in a little bit. Are you ready, Ed? This is going to be a phenomenal...
Yeah, we are ready. All right. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, I see. What does that say? Actually, I can. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Nice. I have one of those at home.
All right. Welcome to The Funniest Thing.
Yes.
Where each week we share stories about how stepping out boldly always leads to better than expected outcomes. I'm Darrell.
I'm Ed.
And we're broadcasting live from middle school studios in beautiful downtown Culver City, the heart of Screenland.
That is correct. We're so happy to be back. We're so happy to have Darrell back.
And I have a question for you, Ed.
Yes?
What is metaphysics?
Great question, and we're going to answer that on today's show, which is called What is Metaphysics with Reverend Jim Gaither. Everyone has a metaphysical theory, whether or not he or she is aware of it or even knows what metaphysics is. A person's metaphysical theory determines to a significant extent how that person experiences the world. And those are Jim's words from his pamphlet that inspired our show, which is called What is Metaphysics? The thoughts and the images we hold in mind are creative. They shape divine substance and energy into manifestation. We exercise our imagination wisely by focusing on our heart's desires as if steering toward a compass point. We can use our imagination to help bring about success, healing, and the best outcomes. On this episode, Darrell and Ed broaden our understanding of metaphysics with guest Jim Gaither, author of What is Metaphysics? And during the second segment, Jim opens our minds to new inspiration with what he has to share and with today's reading, which is Renewed.
Yes. Now, what are we kicking off today's show with?
You know, we could, well, let's want to get into some readings?
Or do we want to do our breaths? Or do the readings and then the breaths?
Yeah, let's do the readings and then the breaths. Okay. This stuff works. That's the main thing.
Well, because the question is, in a lot of these books, a lot of these spiritual books, most of them, not all of them, but most of them mention that what they're sharing is metaphysics.
Yes.
And that practicing these ideas, or what we could say cooperating with these principles that exist,
yes,
that are laws similar to the law of gravity. We can't see the law of gravity, but we can sure feel its effects.
Yes.
When we're cooperating with it and when we're not, when we fall down.
Right.
So just to be clear, we thought it'd be fun because I got this pamphlet a long time ago, and we did see new editions of it at a Unity church nearby. They may still be available. You may be able to go online and request the pamphlet, What is Metaphysics?
Oh, so you were even aware of this long before that time when we found it.
Yeah.
I see. That's what I was
This
wondering.
was like something from back in the Hawaii days.
Oh, wow. Okay. Even better. And then, by the way, Nancy Norman, when she found, when you asked about Jim Gaither.
Yeah, because I was actually, this is how we got our guest. I knew I had a pamphlet in my collection, What is Metaphysics?
Yeah.
And so I dug through and I read it and I saw, oh, Jim Gaither. And I wondered, well, this is pretty old.
Right.
Is Jim Gaither still around?
Right. Good
So
question.
I knew the person to ask was Nancy Norman.
Right.
And she said, well, as luck would have it, he's still around and I have his contact information.
Yes.
And I told her I'd love to have him on the show, and he's on the show.
And she can't say enough about how great of a teacher
Yes.
he is. So we're super excited to have him.
Oh, and you know what else? I'm going to let a little cat out of the bag. He may or may not appreciate this.
What is it?
Well, we have a picture of him from his the first printing of one of his books,
That's right.
The
'cause,
Essential Charles Fillmore.
who was it? Kirky that sent you that book?
I have no idea. We don't know who sent this
Someone
book
sent us a copy of this book.
anonymously. Well, here's the thing. Before I received the book,
Yeah.
Nancy Norman said, because I guess he was teaching
Wait, when did you get the book?
just a week ago.
Oh, wow.
I know. It just came this week, actually Monday.
Where was it? At the PO or here?
No, here
Wow.
from Thrift Books.
Oh, it
Someone
may be
ordered
Kirky.
it. So, and sent it to me. So here's the thing. Before I received the book, The Essential Charles Fillmore, if you're listening, you could watch on YouTube. I'm holding up the book. That's the cover.
And if you're on YouTube and you don't realize we have a podcast, any podcast app, that's where we really started this show, because it was brought to my attention recently by our friend Susan Sly that she didn't know that we had a podcast.
Yeah.
And the podcast is where you can hear all the sound effects, the music, the intros, the outros. But anyway, just so you know,
You could drive
carry,
around
yes,
and listen in your car.
or when you're working out or taking a walk. So any podcast app on your phone will have us. Okay.
So before I received this, Nancy Norman said, I don't know if he'd be willing, but when he taught, he would do a great impression of, do you ever remember the comedian Father Guido Sarducci?
Uh-huh.
And she said that Jim Gaither would imitate
Wow.
him. But then I go, really? So that was a head scratcher because I had no idea what Jim Gaither looked like until I received the book. And I'm holding it up, and you could see he does. I'm going to get it closer in a minute. He does have a little bit of a resemblance, without the black hat of Father Guido Sarducci. Yes, there he is. He looks a little different now, just like we all do. We don't know how long ago this photo was taken, but I certainly don't look like how I looked 10, 20, 30 years ago either.
Right.
So to jump right into it, this is from his pamphlet, and we're just going to read a little bit from it, and then we're going to read some other things, and then he's going to join us. So what is metaphysics? Everyone, and this is from our description, has a metaphysical theory, whether or not he or she is aware of it or even knows what metaphysics is. A person's metaphysical theory determines to a significant extent how that person experiences the world. Jesus was the greatest of practical metaphysicians. Jesus taught how the universe operates in terms of general principles, using concise statements and parables as illustrations. His teachings indicate his metaphysical perspective. The healings and other blessings Jesus bestowed indicate his power as a metaphysical practitioner. That means cooperating with these general principles that he believed or he discovered that the universe operates on. And here we go a little more. Just as science has theoretical and applied branches, so too are the theoretical and practical aspects of metaphysics. The theoretical side of metaphysics is concerned with giving an account of the universe in the most general terms and the most fundamental categories. Practical metaphysics, which is what we're hoping this show inspires you to utilize, because that's why we love doing the show, because we receive the benefits of practical metaphysics, which is the application of metaphysical ideas to everyday life. It is concerned with fuller expression of human potential, health, character development, creativity, harmonious relationships, and success. And from Emmett Fox, remember we encourage you to do a morning routine. This was from September 20th in the book Around the Year with Emmett Fox, and a little from September 21st. And we're talking about the practicality of applying or getting our thought life to cooperate with what we know to be true about these spiritual principles. And he wrote, "You have created your limited self by thinking, and you can destroy it at any moment by thinking a new pattern." And I'm just going to read this because it's a great description of what we're talking about in regarding to interpreting the Bible metaphysically. Just like it mentioned in that pamphlet, Jesus taught in parables, and a parable, for the simplest way to describe it, is a two-story story. There's the surface story, which can be taken literally, and then there's the underlying story or esoteric meaning, which is the spiritual story, which is revealing these universal truths. And this says this: the Bible is the most precious possession of the human race. It shows us how to live. It meets everyone at his own level and brings him to God. Nevertheless, its real value lies in our interpretation of it. Hear a parable. A remote island was inhabited by highly intelligent savages. They had some primitive art and made excellent drawings of animals on the walls of caves. A box was washed ashore containing a number of books, dry and in good condition. The natives were delighted and pored over these pages, admiring the odd shapes and patterns made by the letterpress, totally unaware of the real meanings behind it all, unaware of the very existence of Falstaff or Portia or Hamlet, of Huckleberry Finn, and of the other characters who lived in the books. If you have been reading the Bible without the spiritual interpretation, you are in just that position. And if the idea of savages on a remote island rubs you the wrong way, well, think about it. If you have no idea, like myself, how to read or understand Russian, if a Russian book dropped in my lap, I'd be admiring the odd symbols and shapes that are nothing like our alphabet.
Right.
Or the same thing with something in Chinese or Japanese. But nevertheless, I'd be missing out on everything within those symbols.
Yep. And you know, the good thing about this study of this stuff is we keep going deeper and getting more meaning. We understand it on one level or in one area of our life, and then it just keeps growing and growing and growing. The key about it is that it brings the power, it brings the cause within yourself. I mean, that's one of the keys to living this way, which it comes with responsibility, and at first that might sound scary, but it also comes with the truth that sets us free.
Well, and you get results. That's the main thing.
Yes, you get results.
Well, I should say we're always getting the results of our consciousness, which is our metaphysical interpretation. Yes. But once we learn the principles, well, then we're responsible because now we know better. We're no longer ignorant of the truth. Now, if we cooperate with it, we get those positive results. And that's what's so exciting. That's why the show is called Funniest Thing.
Yeah, if we don't know that we are creative beings,
Yes.
then we fall into the competitive world because we believe there's like this set amount of stuff that's out there. And whether we decide, well, we're losers because we can't win the game, or we're going to win and take it all, either way, we're perceiving it as like a competition of sorts. Like Alan Cohn today, I just had this one earmarked, just a few sentences. He said, the notion of competition is fear-based and has little value in a creative world. He says, eliminate from your mind the notion that someone else can take away your good. You are the source of your life and experience, and everything that comes to you or goes from you is a result of your consciousness. It is quite literally possible for everyone on the planet to succeed gloriously at whatever their heart calls them to do. And your heart can also be referred to as your subconscious mind in the Bible.
Yes.
So,
or your conscience or your intuition.
Right. It's like what you think with feeling within yourself that's generating the results of what you're getting.
Well, you know, I saw a great little writing on conscience, you know, and we know the Latin etymology of conscience means with knowing.
Yes.
Some people consider conscience their intuition, which is
Right.
it's synonymous with intuition.
Right.
But it said this, it said, our conscience is always leading us to our authentic self. It's always leading us to the thing that if we would do it, would bring us the most joy while doing it, and we would be well compensated for it.
Yes.
But a lot of times we don't always listen to our conscience because we think we live in a competitive world. And I'm going to lose out on this deal, even though it doesn't feel really good. I better say yes.
Yes.
And then, you know, we're realizing, whoa,
Yes.
you know, I had a feeling I shouldn't have gone along. And that I had a feeling I shouldn't have gone along with it was the conscience. But it's okay to make those mistakes because then it reinforces the truth that there is this guidance system within us that I could rely on.
Yeah.
That it actually was working, even when I chose not to go along with it.
Right.
And the best part is, like we always say, God doesn't do spite work.
Yep.
Even Einstein said God works subtly but never maliciously. I saw that quote by Einstein.
That's great.
Yeah, so even when we make the mistakes, as soon as we get back on and cooperate again with these principles, boom, we're back in good standing.
Yes. I mean, part of the challenge also is that many of our subconscious minds are riddled with these false beliefs and guilt. And so we have to learn how to redirect our subconscious mind to get on board with the truth and and recognize that we can trust our intuition.
Yes,
we can
that's
trust our trust these nudges, because if we didn't have a voice inside us telling us we better, blah, 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 it's too late, then it would be very easy to always go with the flow. But these programmed ideas can get in the way, or seemingly get in the way. They get our attention. But the good news is, through metaphysics and through this study, we can change our minds. We can, first of all, step out boldly and follow our intuition.
Yeah.
And the more we do that, our subconscious mind will also get on board. Instead of resisting life, we'll start to cooperate with life. And so Joseph Murphy, in this book I found recently, I talked about it last week, Miracle Power for Infinite Riches, Joseph Murphy. He has a little section on page 18 called The Greatest Secret in All the World. He says, man is transformed only one way, and that is by the transformation of his mind. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, says Romans 12:2. This book was written a while ago. He says, others say that interplanetary travel and nuclear fission represent the greatest secrets of our time. We could say AI nowadays, or we could add a whole to that list. But he says the greatest secret, and this is so true, is that the kingdom of God is within man, which means that infinite intelligence, boundless wisdom, infinite power, infinite love, and the answer to every problem under the sun are locked in his own subconscious mind. Man is looking for the greatest secret in the world everywhere but within himself. And that, to me, is metaphysics, because metaphysics deals with first cause, the real cause. So begin now to tap these tremendous powers within you, and you will begin to lead a full and happy life based on God who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. That's from 1 Timothy 6:17. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. John 10:10. And it's funny that, the greatest secret, because many people who are even Christians will miss the secret. God, even though Jesus is saying it again and again, we can be blind to this truth that joy is throughout these texts, that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. These type of teachings.
Which is saying go with your conscience and you'll never be without.
Yeah, I had this, this is practical metaphysics. This is practical Christianity we're talking about. If it's not practical, I guarantee Charles Fillmore didn't want anything to do with it. Any of the great unity teachers that you would have met back in the day, and some like Jim Gaither now, it has to be practical. It has to be applicable in the workshop of my own life, right? So I've been using this. I just quickly tell you an example that this week, so everything's been going very, very well this year with my teaching. It's amazing. That place is the laboratory from this stuff. Does it work? The person next to me who's caught up in a negative state of mind attracts more work, more to complain about, more to groan. I keep blessing it. I keep letting go. I keep doing what Emma Curtis Hopkins said, which is I covenant with the Holy Spirit. So how I've been using that is something comes up, say it's the show, and I'm thinking there's a worry about the show. I covenant with the Holy Spirit related to this, to the show. I'm giving this to the Holy Spirit. I'm not going to do any work to change it and make it successful. The Spirit is going to do the work. But it's like me, it's like the God box idea. I'm letting go of it, but I am affirming it, like I'm using my mind. So I had this group in the morning, 9:30 a.m., and the ideal small group is like 4 to 5, maybe 6 students. This was getting bigger, 9 students. And there's only certain times when I can pull these students to work with them because they can't miss what's going on in their class. So I was just blessing it.
Wow.
I kept doing it. It was still going very well for that large of a group, but the tipping point was starting to happen. I was like, man, this is a lot. Like for me, it was a lot. And then for them to get what they need, it was a lot.
Yeah.
So I covenanted with the Holy Spirit. I'm not even sure I'm saying it right, but it comes from Emma Curtis Hopkins, the scientific Christian mental practices.
Just to be clear, covenant can mean in contemporary terms, I'm making a contract with the Holy Spirit.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to do this because I know you're going to do that.
Right. Oh, right. And
like
it's also
I'm going to believe that you're going to do this because that's your job. But I'm going to go into this. I'm going to go into this with faith.
Yeah. So and this is where the rubber hits the road, because Emma Curtis Hopkins repeats over and over again that our job is to see what's real. Because in reality, nothing is ever off. Nothing is ever truly wrong. When we practice through morning routine, through meditation, through affirmative prayer and affirmative thinking, our job, once we see what Spirit is doing, once we become receptive, even agreeing even if it's just a mustard seed worth, we realize, like Darrell and I, we don't go about trying to solve our problems. We let go of the problem, we let go of the concern, and let Spirit do the work.
Yeah.
Now, if you're out there thinking that means we're just sitting around doing nothing, you're wrong. Because we have let go of the weight of worry, we're doing more. We get more done. We're more kind. We're more generous. We're more...
well, we're open to inspired ideas, and we're open... And now people can walk into our lives with the solution because we're not hunkered down in the concern.
You said it perfectly. Just to put a button on this story, so I covenant with the Holy Spirit. I turned it over to God. I literally forgot about it. I walk into my room, I'm sitting down preparing for the lesson. 2 teachers that are friends of mine that work in the room, one's a student teacher and one's the teacher that she's working with.
Yeah.
The student teacher had kind of been helping me with that large group. They walk up to me and they said, Ed, we noticed your group is getting larger. How would you feel about Miss Monica taking half of the group?
I said, great.
And remember I said 4 to 5 students?
Yes.
I said, amazing, I would love that. So I just quickly made, okay, how are we going to break these up? Broke them up into 2 groups. And now this is an overused term in like coaching and business, but it really is win-win. Like I win The student teacher now gets to teach and get practical experience, and she's happy. And the kids get what they need, which is more attention, because I'm just giving them basic, like, how to write a better sentence, how to, how to clarify your idea. So having less students allows us to give them more attention,
But if you tried to wrestle this and make it happen, I got too many kids and complain to the principal, and I need people to help me, it would have never worked. It would have been worse. Isn't it amazing that getting out of the problem but affirming that God is on it?
Yes.
That's the contract. Our part is to have the faith. God says, look, here's the dotted line. You want me to take care of this? Okay. You're just going to deal with the faith portion. I'm going to handle this, the works portion.
Yes.
You do the faith, I'll do the works.
Yes. And something you said a long time ago that I use all the time, I believe this is principle. There is no suffering required.
No.
So once it starts to feel like suffering, and I was like a virtuous sufferer in the past, I believed, I'm suffering, I'm doing all this work, and it's like I'm dying inside. Now I know it's principle. If that's what's going on, that's my own doing. I got to let that go. God will make it easy. Let it be easy. So you just said it, like, sometimes the toughest part is once I start struggling, I start struggling. The tendency is to start struggling more and do it myself. So the best thing I can do is find some way to slow down. If I can get in my car and take a 6-minute nap, anything to let your consciousness relax.
Go for a walk. Go get a coffee. Read something spiritual. Anything to get out of that loop.
And then once the mind starts to relax, gently reaffirm my desire that the Holy Spirit's doing the work. Then I start to become clear on who I am, and that Spirit is doing the work. And then I go out, enjoy being a light into the world, bless, encourage, laugh.
And just do the next indicated thing, like you said, prepare on the computer.
And it's so natural. Darrell is like, when I first met you, was like really good about, like, these are not contrived. Like, once I know who I am, I just go in and be my natural joyous self. I don't go bowing to people, go over you won't even need to, because it feels so good to start shining my light on people once I remember who I am. So
and that's the magic.
That's it,
Well, I think we got to do the story.
Should we do the breaths first?
Let's do the breaths.
Oh, yeah, because we got story time.
And then the story time.
Yeah, because we want to bring this home. Darrell found this great metaphysical retelling of a story.
Yes.
And we want to do a little story time with you. So we're going to do 3 breaths. And Darrell we worked on this right before we start. Let's do this first. Thank Jeff Comfort, because he's the audio engineer who each week
he takes us right into the comfort zone.
Okay, here's a little affirmation you can use. It's a combination of a denial and an affirmation.
Yes.
We deny the false, we affirm the true.
Yeah, and this is how you break things that get in the way out of your subconscious and then open it up to what works.
Yeah, you got to get it out of your subconscious, because that's one thing Gardner Hunting, I read recently, said, any idea cherished in your subconscious mind, and that's the one you're holding on to, whether you like it or not, if you hold it there, it will demonstrate.
Yes.
So do what we have to do to let go of that. Okay.
And one last thing.
Yeah.
Charles Fillmore said, thoughts are things and they occupy space in your mind. Mm-hmm. So if you're not eliminating the problem thoughts by dismissing them, denying them, saying, no, I'm not going to think this. We don't need to think this way anymore.
Right.
Well, then the newer thoughts have no room. We want to get rid of these.
And we're not vibrating at the same frequency of the solution until we shift. And that's the key. All right, let's take a deep breath. I'm getting better, not worse. My imagination works. I didn't practice that. Go ahead.
I'm getting better, not worse. My imagination works.
I'm getting better, not worse. My imagination works.
It sounded like an old-time cartoon.
I like that. And you know what? This is where you turn into a mystic. Yeah. When you start realizing that your imagination, for me anyway, my imagination actually works, and that it creates an effect in your life. This is where things start to get mystical.
And you're being a metaphysician.
I want to thank everyone who's been donating through Patreon, patreon.com/funniest thing. As you know, there's a Tuesday 4 p.m. Pacific Patreon call, which is amazing. But also just the circulation that you guys are contributing to the show is a major blessing to us. So thank you. If you want to send us something, funniest thing, P.O. Box 1312, Culver City, California, 90232. And this week we got 2 amazing cards in the mail.
Yes.
We got a donation from Mary Weir. So thank you for that. A very generous donation, I might add. It blew our minds. It says, Dear Darrell and Ed, just saying hello. I'm also sending a donation. I continue to listen to your podcast. Thank you for continuing to do the show. Whenever I listen, I am inspired. Have a wonderful week. Love, Mary. Thank you, Mary.
And this one's from the Netherlands.
Card. Yeah, this one we don't. Okay. It's from the Netherlands. It says, Dear Darrell and Ed, stand by the truth, for its seed is in itself. Be the light, health, substance, beauty, and youth of your world. For ignorance, see light. For sickness, health. For want, plenty. For ugliness, beauty. For old age, youth. For bondage, freedom.
Yeah.
Get online with this doctrine. Let it be your first, last, and only thought. That's from Myrtle Fillmore. Or get on fire with this doctrine.
Yes.
Let it be your first, last, and only thought. Myrtle Fillmore. This is great. What a great quote. Thank you for everything. Sending love from Van Gogh country in the Netherlands. And it's from, we think the name is Nell, possibly.
And hugs and kisses.
Yeah.
Whoever this is, we're dying to know exactly who you are.
Yeah, because there was no return address on the envelope, and you have beautiful, very cool writing. It's just hard to quite discern, but it looks like it's Gnall, perhaps, or ELL, but it looks like an A, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're gonna have to find
So
out our
please let us
mystery.
know, or is it GRALL, Grawl?
Yeah, who our mystery date is.
Please let us know. You can email us at darrellanded.com. There's a contact form, or darrellanded@gmail.com. And so now it is time for metaphysical story time before we go to the break.
And this is the perfect lead-in for our guest. Now, I'm reading this from a book we highly recommend. You've heard of her before on our show. It's by Florence Scovel Shinn, the author of The Game of Life. And this is The Secret Door to Success. And this is the inner meaning of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I have been asked to give a metaphysical interpretation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, one of Grimm's fairy tales. It is amazing how this picture, a fairy story, swept sophisticated New York and the whole country due to Walt Disney's genius. This fairy tale was supposed to be for children, but men and women have packed the theater. It is because fairy tales come down from old legends of Persia, India, and Egypt, which are founded on truth. Snow White, the little princess, has a cruel stepmother who is jealous of her. This cruel stepmother idea appears also in Cinderella. Nearly everyone has a cruel stepmother. The cruel stepmother is a negative thought form you have built up in the subconscious. Snow White's cruel stepmother is jealous of her and always keeps her in rags and in the background. All cruel thought forms do this. They're always holding us back.
Yes.
You know? The subconscious just wants to play it safe because it's like, we're okay here. You sure you want to go further? But that's a cruel thought form.
It really is.
The cruel stepmother consults her magic mirror every day, saying, "Magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" One day the mirror replies, "Thou queen mayest fair and beauteous be, but Snow White is lovelier far than thee." This enrages the queen. You know, when we start to get an inspired idea to move toward our desire. So she decides to send Snow White to the forest to be killed by one of her servants. That's when I tell myself, I'm too old to do this now. What's the point? Or I'm too young. You know, she decides to send Snow White to the forest to be killed by one of her servants. However, the servant's heart melts when Snow White begs for her life, so he leaves her in the woods. The woods are filled with terrifying animals and many pitfalls and dangers. She falls in terror to the ground, and while there, a most unusual spectacle presents itself. Scores of the most delightful little animals and birds creep up and surround her. Rabbits, squirrels, deer, beavers, raccoons, etc. She opens her eyes and greets them with pleasure. They are so friendly and attractive. She tells her story, and they lead her to a little house, which she makes her home. Now, these friendly birds and animals symbolize our intuitive leads or hunches, which are always ready to get you out of the woods. The little house provides or proves to be the home of the 7 dwarfs. Everything is in disorder. So Snow White and her animal friends begin to clean the house. When the 7 dwarfs come home from their work of digging gold, they discover the change and at last find Snow White asleep on one of the beds. In the morning, she tells her story, remains with them to keep house and cook their meals, and is very happy. The 7 dwarves symbolize the protective forces all about us. So this means all this is happening in our favor, always.
Right.
In the meantime, the cruel stepmother consults her mirror, and it says to her, over the hills in the greenwood shade, where the 7 dwarfs their dwelling have made, there Snow White is hiding her head, and she is lovelier far, O queen, than thee. This infuriates the queen. So she starts off disguised as an old hag with a poisoned apple for Snow White. She finds her in the house of the 7 dwarfs and tempts her with the big red luscious apple. The birds and animals endeavor to tell her not to touch it. They try to give her the hunch not to eat it. They rush around in dismay, but Snow White can't resist the apple. She takes one bite and falls apparently dead. Now all the little birds and animals rush off to bring the 7 dwarfs to the rescue, but too late. Snow White lies lifeless. They all bow their heads in grief. Then suddenly the prince appears, kisses Snow White, and she comes to life. They are married and live happily ever after. The queen, the cruel stepmother, is swept away by a terrific storm. The old thought form is dissolved and dissipated forever. The prince symbolizes the divine plan of your life. When it wakes you up, you live happily ever after. This is the fairy story, which has enthralled New York and the whole country. Find out what form of tyranny your cruel stepmother is taking in your subconscious. It is some negative conviction which works out in all your affairs. We hear people saying, my good always comes to me too late. I've lost so many opportunities. We must reverse the thought and say repeatedly, I am wide awake to my good. I never miss a trick. We must drown out the old dreary suggestions of the cruel stepmother, because it's not even a real mother. That's why it's always cast as a stepmother.
Right.
We must drown out the dreary suggestions of the cruel stepmother. Eternal vigilance is the price of freedom from these negative thought forms. And the overall theme of this story is nothing can hinder, nothing can delay the manifestation of the divine plan of my life. The light of lights streams on my pathway, revealing the open road of fulfillment.
Yes. All right. Shout out to Zephyr and Rod and Mrs. Spicer out there on YouTube, and Robert, maybe Leeshock perhaps. And then we got some great comments coming in from You Don't Like My Music. Oh, wow. Yeah, there's cool stuff going on in the chat. We got to bring in our guest. But I want to thank you all for joining us. And as always, take what works for you, let go of the rest, and you got to apply it in that is what metaphysics is, man. You got to apply it in the workshop of your own life, see what works for you, because this stuff works for us. And we're just here to share what works for us, because we practice it and we've been blown away and transformed by it on a daily basis. So coming up next, Reverend Jim Gaither opens our minds to new inspiration with today's reading, Renewed, and a whole lot more. So thank you for listening to Funniest Thing with Darrell and Ed, live from Middle School Studios in beautiful downtown Culver City, the heart of Screenland. All right, did you need to tinkle? before we continue?
Were there comments about the hats?
I hope so.
All
There's a
right.
great lively discussion going on. I appreciate all those comments too. I don't want to cut them short, but we're on a little schedule here. But if you're not yet, well, I guess you wouldn't be hearing this if you're not on YouTube already.
Let Jim know you can come
Jim, you can come alive and unmute and such. How are you, buddy?
Hey, living the dream, man.
All right, good. The YouTubers are with us right now, but the audio this part will be clipped out as the little break in the middle. But that's why I don't want to ask you anything until that's going to bring out some good stuff until we get live again for the audio podcast. But I will ask you something mundane, such as how's everything out in Missouri? How's the weather out there today?
It's a bit muggy,
Yeah,
kind of warm for, I don't know, this time of year, you never know what you're going to get in Missouri, honestly. So,
right.
yeah, fall's coming in, though. Fall is coming in.
Yeah.
Nothing
If
started to turn yet.
If we get out there again, we might be out there for the metaphysical Bible study gathering, the Fillmore Bible Society. We spoke and hung out there last year with Mark Hicks, put it together. So if they do that again and we're out there, we'll let you know. Hopefully we can connect when we're out there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I'd like to see Mark, too. If he's
Mhm.
there, if he's around that time, yeah, we'll see how the schedule looks. My schedule's kind of wacky. It's sort of all over the place. So, and
Right.
I don't know what my next month is other than I got a lot of stuff going on, but the days and times and all that sort of thing. I just have to take a little bit, look ahead a few weeks.
Right. Of course. All right. I'm going to.
Okay. As soon as Ed gets back, we're going to kick things off.
Great.
Are you excited now?
I am. I'm charged up. So much good stuff in that first hour,
Oh, good.
half hour, whatever it is, 40 minutes, whatever it is.
Well,
yeah.
we're blaming you for that. You're the one who inspired this episode. I'm just going to hold it up again on the break. Like I said, I'm not sure if you could still request these at unity.org, or they may have them at a local Unity church near you.
I think you can request them. I
Unity.
haven't really looked lately, but a lot of times they still have that stuff, and they might send that. I don't know if they would print you a copy or send you like an e-document that you can print out yourself or something like that. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, unity.org. What is metaphysics? It is such a great, concise explanation for those of us, including me, who was never quite clear on what was meant by metaphysics. I kind of had an idea, but it wasn't always.
A lot of that going around, I think. But
yeah. I think I know what they're talking about, but I'm not quite sure. All right, Ed, are you ready?
Right, you
Bring
ready?
us in? Yeah.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Funniest Thing with Darrell and Ed. Today's show is called What is Metaphysics with Reverend Jim Gaither. I want to just pause for a moment because, we're not going to answer this question, but on YouTube, you don't like my music. This person has a great mind because they have a lot of great questions. And it says, question, does physics require faith?
Physics?
Yeah, and I think we should just let that hang out there. Does physics require faith? Because it actually has my wheels turning because there's a lot to that question. We're not going to, but for now, we're going to bring in Jim Gaither. How are you, sir?
hey, I'm living the dream.
Yeah, dude. Hats, baby. Hats.
Yeah, I saw you guys wearing hats, so I thought, well, I have this one that I like. I don't wear it very often.
Yeah, we're getting some good comments on hats. More hats says you don't like music, and Zephyr says add some for hats. Add some is ADSUM.
I like that question you read, by the way.
What's that?
I said I like that question about does physics require faith?
Uh-huh. Did you want to say anything about it?
I do. Yeah, it absolutely does. every intellectual system has certain uh, unprovable assumptions, including mathematics. There's a famous mathematician, well, famous among mathematicians, I guess I should say, is Kurt Gödel, who's famous for his incompleteness theorem, which basically shows that basically proved logically that you can't have a self-consistent system of any kind, intellectual system, without at least one unproven assumption. Okay? So physics, the scientific method itself, uh, has faith about certain ideas, certain presuppositions. Um, one of which is unnecessary, as it turns out. But the idea that we live in a material universe is actually an unnecessary hypothesis for doing science, but nevertheless, it's often assumed, except by some of the more advanced physicists. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so there, I don't have much more to say about that because I haven't really been thinking about it in a while. But there are certain, just kind of unprovable assumptions.
Wait, I gotta say one thing. I just saw the movie recently. The movie about the atomic bomb that just came out. What was that? Oppenheimer?
Oppenheimer?
And in there, they had to have faith that their theory
I hope
about,
this works.
yes, they had to have faith. And they're telling the general, well, it's not 99% that this isn't going to destroy the whole world. Like this one setting off this, and he goes, wait, what? 99%? And yeah, he goes basically saying, yeah, we have to have faith that in that 99%. And the general response, like, well, 100% would be nice. He goes, well, what do you want? 99%. He goes, 100% would be nice. Like he was in shock that even the greatest minds had to have faith in that proposition that this physics, this idea of physics would actually work.
Yeah. One of the unproven assumptions of science is that everything will continue to go the way it's been going. Think
Right.
about it, right? This is the way it's always been going, so this is the way it always will go. And that's just a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Turns
Wow.
out to be a really useful one, by the way. I'm not saying anything
Yeah.
against science. Science is great. Science is one of the most useful things that we have. Um,
Right.
but it does have sort of assumptions that can't really be
Yes.
proven, and that's one of them. That's
Right.
yeah.
I'm thinking about my dad when he started in the space program. Um, and he's designing, like he helped design the first lunar module
Oh,
and wings for space shuttles and things, and it's like there's always going to be some level of faith, and when you're doing something that's never been done before, that all the calculations and like you were just saying, that and this is in real time. He's got real people climbing into things that they're designing, and they're so specific in their calculations and everything, but there's still there's so many factors that they have to have faith that
well,
this
yeah.
thing's going to work.
Engineering is really tricky because you start designing something, you never know really for sure if it's going to work until you try it.
Yeah.
That's just sort of the practical application of physics.
Yeah. And you have to have faith throughout the entire process or you'd quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have to sort of assume science works in order to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And when we start
What's the
applying
point?
practical metaphysics, that's why our show, we say stepping out boldly always leads to better than expected results, outcomes, when you're practicing this stuff, because now you're shifting a variable in your experience and trusting that the outcome is going to be different. Sometimes that means letting down my guard instead of
Yeah.
protecting myself. Now I'm going to bless others instead of worrying about what am I going to get.
Mhm.
I'm going to trust, that this is going to have the outcome that I intuitively suspected and was inspired to, in the first place. But there's always going to be a voice that comes up and goes, how do you know this is going to work? We talked about this on
That's
last
the
week's
cruel
episode.
stepmother.
The cruel stepmother comes up, how's this going to work? And we have to be like children to enter the kingdom, because on some level we got to go, I don't know, but it's going to be fun to find out. I take some sort of lighthearted approach to it.
Yeah, that's good thing you have a contract, a covenant, right?
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
so one of the general topics of metaphysics is law, and specifically causation, right? And so one of the things that's, I think, different about sort of new unity, new thought, and some of the others is this emphasis on the idea of law. So if you do this, then you will get these results. That's a law that
Yes.
always works. So again, there's a little bit of faith in that, just like there is with in science. Just because um, uh, the scientific principles have worked in the past, doesn't logically doesn't necessarily mean that they will continue to do that. But that's again faith, having faith in the law, so that if you hold to those ideas, if you do your positive imagineering, I think is a term you guys came up with, right? Positive imagineering, something like that.
Yes.
For Wayne
That
Manning last week, yes.
Oh, Wayne, yeah. You're trusting you're trusting that there's a law at work, that this is reliable, right? You do this, then you're going to get a particular result. So that's part of metaphysics. My my background, my academic background, is in philosophy. So I look at it from that. That's where metaphysics comes from. So I look at it from that perspective.
And when did you go from philosophy major to study of these principles through this metaphysical lens? How did that come about for you?
Well, actually, I became a Unity minister before I did my philosophy graduate work. I went to
Ah,
Unity School, Unity Seminary, to become a minister, and then I started studying philosophy in my part time while I was doing ministry, and I kind of continued till I completed that actually. And so, uh, because Unity talks so much about metaphysics, and because I had done some reading in philosophy around the same time I started to find unity, that sort of those two sort of things came together for me, and I was like, what, I wanted to know what's the basis of, what is the origin of this idea of metaphysics, and so I went and philosophy studied metaphysics, ethics, philosophy of mind, philosophy of language. There's logic, all sorts of other things, right? And so I just found it fascinating, and I continue to do so because you never know everything. Just keep learning.
yeah.
Well, my question is, did you find that they reinforced each other?
That's a really good question. As a matter of fact, what what you have in the history of philosophy is different viewpoints. Speaking to that, what you had in the pamphlet there, the different kinds of worldviews. But the earliest philosophers were, basically in effect believed that mind was the nature of the universe, one way or another. So you go back to Pythagoras and Plato, for example, like some early philosophers, and you see the same thing in Eastern philosophy, Vedanta, or the Vedas, or actually the Upanishads. You find this viewpoint, and it has continued to be held throughout the centuries. So there have always been the position, the term they use is idealist philosophy, right? That reality is ultimately spiritual or mental. Idealist philosophy. There's always been idealist metaphysicians in every age, including ours, and there have also been materialist dualists. More recently, the process metaphysicians. So those are fundamental worldviews, and the idealist strand uh, goes through Hegel into like the pragmatist Charles Sanders Peirce. I don't want to overload you all with a bunch of philosophy names, but throughout the ages, that has always been a position that is considered to be coherent and logical, and laid out, and that fits with what Unity's perspective is. Unity's metaphysics, Unity's theology is part of that long tradition that's both Western and Eastern. So we think of ourselves as new, and it's what's new is the are the practical applicacations actually. So
Yeah.
for thousands of years, well, to some degree, the Eastern in Hinduism they've known about practical applications. explanations. But in the Western world, it's just been, oh, this is, the theory about how things are and how they work and that sort of thing. But none of these philosophers ever thought to, well, if that's the case, then can I change my conditions by changing my mind? For some reason, nobody thought of that till like the 19th century.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of New Thought.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that William James, the father of American psychology, brought to the table was exactly that. I could change my world by changing the way I'm thinking. And I could change my thinking because then he saw the law of reverse mechanics working in the material world. Heat can produce energy, which can produce movement or locomotion. And then locomotion can produce energy, which produces heat. So if I act just like thought produces emotion and produces an action, well, then maybe I can assume the action of the desired emotion I want, which will then produce the mental state, the thinking state. That's what William James, which is old philosophy too, that
he's one of my favorites.
Act as if you believe and you will have it.
Yeah, with the will to believe. Right?
Yeah.
Well, he wrote that book, Varieties of Religious Experience, which helped to sort of the world of religious thought to start recognizing that there are fundamental ideas that you find in multiple traditions. Right?
Yes.
And one of course, my favorite chapter from that book is called The Religion of Healthy Mindedness. Are you familiar with that?
What's that chapter? Because I have that book.
Yeah. The Religion of Healthy Mindedness is about New Thought. It's got a bunch of, some of the early references to early New Thought writers and testimony. This is interesting. Testimony from people who were healed through applying the principles. So there it is, right in a classic text. I love that it's right there. There's a chapter on mysticism, which is really good. It's actually quite a brilliant book. So,
I have another question: is there a difference, or are they synonymous? Symbolism and metaphysics. What's the difference between seeing the ideas represented in symbolism? Isn't that also metaphysical? Or can you? I've always confused the two.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of people are confused about that. Well, I don't know a lot, but we'll just say it's a common sort of confusion. So the connection is that when you read the stories, it's like Snow White or the Bible, right? You're reading those, and then you interpret them from your metaphysical perspective. So this is kind of where different worldviews plays in.
Yes.
If you are part of that idealist metaphysical world, then when you look at the symbols, you're going to say, okay, what do these signify in terms of ultimate reality? And there's really only one thing they can signify, in a sense, is ideas, because in this viewpoint, that's actually all there is. Our perceptions, like right now, I'm in your mind, you're in my mind, right? That's how we are experiencing each other, and others are, also at some point doing the same thing, right? So the metaphysical interpretation, for example, of a fairy tale or any other kind of story is saying, if we look at these as symbols for reality in some sense, then sort of overlaps into Jungian psychology and that sort of thing, archetypes. But anyway, if we look at these as symbols for reality, then what are they symbols for?
Yes.
So when sometimes people will say metaphysics, and what they mean by that is metaphysical interpretation of the Bible, right? But metaphysics has it's kind of its own sort of philosophical department, if you will, and so on the thing of different worldviews, you could see right away that if you're an idealist, you interpret the scriptures in this way, the writings, the stories, whatever. You interpret them as symbols for divine ideas or something, right? If you have a materialist worldview, what you're interested in is any of this stuff true? And of course, the fairy tale. You actually went into how a little bit about how the fairy tales came out of sort of more ancient stories, trees,
Right.
right? So if you're a materialist, you can still kind of look into that sort of thing, but you're not going to say, now I'm going to dig into the esoteric meaning, right? Esoteric meaning's the inner meaning. Esoteric meaning and metaphysical interpretation are kind of the same thing. Um, but you're not, if you're a materialist, if you think everything's just matter, then you're not going to look, you're not going to, you're not going to go there. Right.
Right.
So, two different worldviews. A dualist might go there, might look at someone who believes in mind and matter as somehow interacting. It's a dualist, right? They might be able to interpret things metaphysically, as we say. So, but your worldview does sort of play into how you interpret stories, and probably more importantly, how you interpret your own life.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's happening in my life? Well, if I'm an idealist, then what I have to say is what's happening in my life are divine ideas as I interpret them in my mind, my ideas of the divine ideas, and that what that means. If I don't like the way things are going, all I need to do is start changing my interpretation of the divine ideas. Right. So you can do that
Yes.
if you're an idealist. Right. But if you're a dualist, you might not be so sure about that. And if you're materialist, you just say it's all nonsense. Right? And
Yeah.
so that's sort of part of the point of that little pamphlet is just, your worldview has an enormous impact on your experience because your experience is framed by your worldview.
Yeah.
Experience is framed by it. So it plays into everything. The way you interpret the stuff that happens in your life, the way you interpret things that are happening in the world, all comes down to that big sort of overview that's I think for most people somewhat intuitive, but everybody's got that worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
This,
right.
this is incredible because I have lived through different worldviews. Now that you lay this out, and I hope our listeners aren't just writing off. I hope they're even listening to what you're saying and asking themselves, well, what does this mean to me? Am I an idealist? Am I a materialist? Am I a dualist? Well, I can tell you, there was a big chapter in my life. Without knowing it, my worldview was materialist. And that's why life was hard going for me, because it was for me living by that philosophy, which I saw all this stuff as, that's ridiculous, because look what I'm living under here. But it was my view that was causing the anguish, and I was so myopic about it. Thank goodness someone helped me open my mind a little bit to where I became more of a dualist. And I was like, okay, I want to believe this. I could see what you're saying here. It feels better, but I still kind of live in this place.
Right.
And then eventually, it's almost like these were the stages of my psychological evolution. And then I got to the
Amazing.
point where I became more, as you're explaining it on this episode, an idealist. And this is where I want to continue to go deeper. I want to remain in this place. Why? Because the results I'm getting and the way I'm feeling about my life, myself, and the experiences I'm having as a result of this view, for me, is way more pleasant and way more effective and reliable. So I'm glad you brought this up, man. This has been incredible. What do you think, Ed?
Well, one of the things that stuck out to me was the idea of what you said of how we frame things and the importance of that, and how this kind of relates to a lot of what's been jumping out at me in metaphysics lately, and the new thought stuff I've been reading is about the emphasis on subconscious mind and the place that it plays in all of this, because a lot of the worldview is stored in that subconscious mind, right? It's not, I don't wake up in the morning and say, put my whole worldview together.
Right.
It starts kind of playing. And this is where it gets tricky, because I might think I've shifted over my thinking, but my subconscious mind, and I know what it's doing by the way I feel, is really important in all of this, because that's the thing that's generating the feeling. And if you study new thought plus feeling
Yeah.
is what offers the demonstration. So when I'm working with students, for example, say a student, and I am in special education, so usually it's someone who's trying to learn something that they were, quote, air quotes, supposed to have learned earlier, and there's been something that's in the process that's stuck or whatever.
Wait, are you talking about me?
Yes, that's why I've been sent here.
Funniest thing.
Yeah, so, but just for an example like that, it's like, so a student who has been stuck and doesn't know why. Maybe there's something to do with, maybe there's some dyslexia, they're turning letters around, whatever. Their mind just, maybe when they look at something on a page, their mind just scrambles it up. It just doesn't, whatever it is, but their mind can come up with a lot of different stories and worldviews about that.
Right.
They might think I'm dumb, I'm not good enough.
Right.
They might think it's an impossibility for me to ever do this, right?
Right.
And then that can lead to a negative self-image, that can lead to combativeness in class, or that can lead to completely shutting down or whatever. So one of the things that I work with my students on, because I work with myself on this, how are we going to reframe this thing so that when it comes up, you come to a new conclusion?
Yeah.
And it's just sometimes it's a process, right? But even if it's as simple as me telling one of my students, hey, your mind just works this way. Not everyone's does. You take things and you flip them. And maybe no one's ever said that to them in a simple way that they understand. And now I tell them, and it, again, if you're listening, this is not like, I'm just giving a general kind of example, but very specifically, I've been working with students for a long time. And this week, yesterday, I was having this discussion. So now we change the framing of it, right? So what I suggest you do when I'm talking to my students, for example, is say, so when you see this, slow down, take a breath. Because another thing that happens when someone feels under stress or they're worried they're not going to be able to do it, they might start rushing even more, just like I was describing with myself earlier. So let's slow down. Let's take your time. Here's a little strip that you can put on top of your page, and so now you're only seeing one line at a time, so you're not getting distracted by that all. So I'm giving new strategies. So now it's reframing something that might have been this dreadful, everyone's looking at me, this means I'll never be good. This, there could be. Now it's, okay, this is something that I have to apply certain strategies for because of the way my mind works, taking all the judgment on and the stigma out of it. And now it's a very different experience, right? Like the whole reframing of it is so important. And Darrell one time shared this with me about why, like when you try to take a picture of the moon, it looks so tiny in the photo.
After you take the picture, it looks so much smaller than what you're seeing.
And what is the reason for that again?
Well, because our eyes we're not seeing with our eyes, we're seeing with our brain. And our brain, when we're looking at the moon through our eyes, because it's telling us this is important. Like the brain is saying, okay, this is important. So it naturally is actually zooming in to an extent psychologically. Right. So the moon looks big and beautiful. You hold up your iPhone and take a picture and you'll see this tiny little speck. You go, wait a minute, why does it look so different than what I was looking at?
Right. So like in the case of me, like one of my students, they pick up something to read. And in the past, and I'll tell you this for myself, if you get that myopic focus, like my whole life, my meaning, my self-worth is based on what's about to happen right here. Oh, yes. It's hell, right? But if you take your shoulders go down, you take a breath and go, this is one thing, and I need to learn some new strategies in order to be successful, but my self-worth, who I am, what I can do is no longer based on this. So now it's no longer so zoomed in. New ideas start to flow. Yeah. There's all of a sudden the help that we didn't realize is available to us. Now we broaden our perspective. We realize, wait, I have more help than I realized. And now, because I'm not all combative, I can let it in and accept the help, and so on and so forth. But so when you said that about like how our worldview frames things, it's really, really important. Because when I studied psychology, I studied spiritual psychology. That was one of the and I'm sure you've heard it in different walks of life, but reframing things is so important. Taking that worldview off of it, changing what it means to us. It can change it changes everything really in the way we experience life. So I love that.
Well, you
Yes, I
explain,
love your
yeah.
I love your application of it.
Well, it
It
also
applies to
explains.
adults as well as students.
That's what I was thinking. And I was thinking about there's lots of little ways we can help ourselves with changing our worldview with the littlest things, like the littlest sayings help change my whole life because it changed my worldview. Like one of them is inch by inch, life's a cinch. It sounds ridiculous, but that has saved my butt and allowed me to do incredible things that I could never do by just relying on that simple statement. And just recently, I'm putting together illustrations with a book, and I've never done it before. I've always, what do you call it, delegated to act because I didn't want to learn the program. I thought it was too hard to learn this computer program, InDesign, that's used for doing this. It's the professional program. And then just 2 weeks ago, I said, well, wait a minute. I'm doing like, I had to remind myself, no, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Let me just see. I'll go online and put easy way to learn how to lay out a book in InDesign. We could do that now. And this 20-something-year-old young lady is joyfully sharing how to do it. And I said, and then I'm going, oh, this is 25 minutes. I could see how I was doing what your students do.
Yeah.
But we can all relate to your student because we all do that. And that's probably why you're so well able to share.
Yeah, let's be clear. It's because I relate to that doing it myself.
Yes, and it may not be dyslexia, but we do it all the time.
Yes.
And this is the cruel stepmothers. So I had to go, no, Darrell, just watch the video little at a time. And I start, because I let myself off the hook, I started enjoying the video.
Yeah.
And then the urge, oh, you should be following along and doing it along with, no. Let's just enjoy watching it, Darrell. Like I was becoming a good parent to myself. And what happened? That was enough for the day, just watching it.
Yeah.
The next day, I'm going to try following along and doing her prompts, with the program. I did that. Woo! I was able to do it. And I felt great. And this is with everything, folks. Mm-hmm. This is how we're applying the understanding of metaphysics, what we're learning, to ourselves.
Yeah. And the results are amazing. That's what I'll add is that I see kids blossom and bloom by not only are they learning skills for reading, but they're learning skills on how the mind works, how they learn, how to reframe things for themselves. And if you can start doing that, that's why I mentioned at the beginning, it puts the power back inside of me and inside of us in ways that we didn't realize or that we may not have been taught. And that is really, really powerful, and that's what I hope that we continue to inspire with this show is that choice point within ourselves and how powerful that is in transforming our experience. So,
and that we're the only limits. We put the only limits on ourselves. Like these examples just prove I am the only limiting maker in my life. Not anything outside of me. Yeah. I am the limiting maker, and that's good news.
Right.
Because if I'm the only limiting maker, well, then I can make a shift.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Your whole program remind me of a story. I guess a story about my life or whatever. But it would take me a few minutes to do it, and I don't know how close you are to the end.
Oh, we got it, man. We'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Yes, we'd love to hear it.
We're free as birds nowadays.
So, many years ago, I pretty regularly wrote articles for Unity Magazine, and I got the idea to interview Phil Jackson. So if you're not a basketball or sports fan, you wouldn't know who Phil Jackson is. But he was the coach of the Chicago Bulls at the time. And that was when they were kind of in the middle of their success story with their 3 consecutive championships and just as they're kind of leaning into getting the next one. But Coach Phil had written a book called Sacred Hoops. And a couple of things from that, and this is what your show reminded me of. One was Phil used with that team visualization. He had what he called a vision quest. And just to set this up a little bit, a lot of people don't realize this. Michael Jordan had played for a number of years and had been great for the Bulls, but the Bulls weren't that good. till Phil Jackson came along. So this is about his coaching success, right? So he'd have a vision quest, and he'd have the guys visualize succeeding, visualize, playing great, visualize achieving the championship. And they did it with the videos and that sort of thing. He had these techniques he used. And the other thing that he emphasized was staying in the present, right? You're inch by inch. Life is a cinch, inch by inch. Made me think of this, being in the present. So the emphasis was, one of the things that happens in sports, any sport, but a lot of times in basketball pretty quickly, is a guy's head will still be in the last play, right? Whether it's a good play or bad play, that's where his mind is, right? Phil emphasized this idea of being in the present. So you've forgotten the last play, right? And you're not looking forward to anything. You're staying right there in the present. And he also helped guys sort of adjust their attitudes, be more community team oriented, people like Dennis Rodman and some of the others. But he applied this, idea of reframing in a number of different ways to turn this team that was not particularly good, right, into like the dominant team of the 90s. Now, I'm sorry for those of you who might be Knicks fans or, Lakers or whatever. You probably don't want to be reminded of that. But it's kind of an example of getting people to work together, holding to the same vision, right, and having them sort of in that frame of mind. Inch by inch, life is a cinch. Staying really in the present moment. Right?
Yes.
Because then there is no past or future, and so that time sort of becomes irrelevant. You're just like right there doing whatever it is you need to be doing. So I just wanted to share that because all that you were saying today sort of brought that opportunity to mind. So
that's awesome, man.
It was a fun interview, by the way. Yeah,
that's great. What you're saying, I'll throw in this last bit too. It's funny because Darrell and I were sitting right next to Phil Jackson in a coffee shop the day. I don't know if you remember this, but Phil Jackson, everyone in Lakerland thought he was going to be rehired, but they hired Mike D'Antoni instead. The day they announced it, we were sitting he was at the bar. We were at a table in the coffee shop, and he was looking at ESPN. They're announcing that Mike D'Antoni was hired. Phil Jackson is sitting there watching it on TV.
Wow. Yeah,
and all of LA is like thinking, everyone was chanting, bring back Phil that weekend, and everyone thought it was going to be Phil. Yeah, he was eating snacks, had a drink or whatever, and it was cool.
And empty. I mean, the restaurant was empty except for us, Phil Jackson, one other guy, and the bartender. Remember? Yep. It was empty.
And it's funny because I didn't know if I was going to say something or not because I was kind of like starstruck because I've always loved him as well. And but I used a technique that I learned actually in that spiritual psychology program. Like many of us know that like when we're judging someone else, we're projecting something that we're judging ourselves negatively onto them. The same is true for positive things. When we see something in someone and we think they're so great, it's very helpful to write all the things down that they're great. Now change it to I am. Like, I am a great leader. I am patient with people. I encourage the best. And it's like reclaiming the positive aspects that we often also project. And I did it that day, and I didn't end up having to say anything because, you're trying to think of something witty or blah, 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 or whatever. And sometimes that just doesn't go well. Instead, I just wrote down those things, and I got a lot out of just seeing him, and I was able to enjoy it without the weirdness.
Well, and I'm sure he felt it too. I'm sure, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this stuff moves out of us, this consciousness. So he probably got hit with a wave of positivity.
True.
Just from the way you shifted that energy in that atmosphere.
True. And then the other thing I was going to say is the cool part about the metaphysical thing, or it's like, many of us, I felt like there's places that I'm just stuck. It's too late, blah, blah, blah. But when we apply these principles and this science of living and feel a shift, like it's more of like a tectonic, it's like a glacial shift deeper within us that reminds us that we can be what we truly came here to be, that who we are is valuable. So when my students not only do they improve in reading, but when they get a greater sense of what's possible for them, the ripple effect of that, we'll see changes in behavior, academics, relationship building, like all things
in their families
expand, right? Yeah,
it affects their family life.
Yes,
it affects everything. Life.
The whole level rises, not just like one area improves, the whole thing improves. And that's what I like about what I would call us living this metaphysical way. It's like when one area of our life gets blessed,
All areas.
all areas get blessed, and it's principle. So we can keep applying it across, and we start to see it being true across whatever area it is, whatever subject, whatever we're thinking about or doing starts to transform for the better.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. You do beautiful work. Both
You
you guys.
too.
In your life outside of your podcast and in your life inside your podcast. So
Would you be? Thank you for
just
that.
so happy I got.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Tell
I just-
people
I was
about
just
your
saying,
books.
I mean,
Oh yeah, sorry. You go, and then I'm going to ask you something.
okay. No, I was just going to say I'm so glad I found out about you guys. You know, I'm going to be watching your previous podcasts that I didn't know about, and I'm very impressed with you and what you're doing. So I feel honored to be one of your guests.
Well, we're gonna definitely call you back in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What I was speaking over you, what I was just simply going to say is, would you be willing to come back on again, share some more insights down the line?
Sure. Yeah. We can work it out. Like I said, my schedule is I have an erratic schedule. I don't have one of those. I know what hours I'm going to be in any given month.
Yeah.
So,
We love it.
but generally it's relatively flexible. So I'm sure we can work something
Cool.
out.
And then the other question, the name of you have what, 2 books out besides this pamphlet? Do you have 2 books published? What are the names of the books so people can
Look them
up and get them for themselves?
Okay, one of them was The Essential Charles Fillmore, which you held up previously with my younger self.
Yep.
That's been there's a sort of revised edition that's out now in paperback, and I made what I consider to be some improvements in that book because people were still sort of interested in the book, and it was out of print. So that's anyway The Essential Charles Fillmore, and the other book is called The Hidden Realm of God, and the subtitle is The Historical Jesus and His Healing Philosophy.
Wow.
And I should clarify that subtitle. I'm not saying that Jesus had a philosophy about healing. I'm saying that he had a philosophy that, when adopted, heals.
Yes.
So part of that book, it is about historical Jesus. There's been a lot of stuff written about that. But it's also connecting ideas like love, forgiveness, optimism, belief, other aspects of his teaching that now are pretty much accepted as being, having a therapeutic effect.
Yes.
So the book has all this research where you can go find the research that says, yeah, this is what this does. And so that's what that book's about. It's self-published, so you can get it on Amazon. I didn't want to fool around I had other projects in mind, so I didn't want to fool around sending around to publishers to get somebody else to publish it, so I just self-published it.
Oh, I'm looking forward to getting that
I
one.
forgot all about the reading. You've probably been saying it. I'm sorry if I wasn't listening, but do you want to should we read the Joyce Kramer to take us out, or should we wrap it up?
No, we got to read the Joyce Kramer, and we got a story to tell about Jim.
All right, so we got a great reading. By the way, everyone out there in YouTube land, by the way, MJ, Zephyr, Brandon, you don't like music. There's been a great conversation going on in the chat. We're still learning how to maneuver that part into the show, but I want you to know I see it going on. It's awesome that you guys are discussing all this stuff, you people. And Lois Conklin asked about my hat. My wife made the bucket hat. It's called iTink Studios. She has a shop on Etsy and on Instagram, iTink Studios. It's made out of vintage material. It's what's it called?
Corduroy.
It's 2-sided or whatever,
Yeah.
reversible.
Creative.
So that's my bucket hat. I love it. My wife made it for me. I went to the surf earlier, and this is often one of the hats I'll throw on. But anyway, so let's get to the Joyce Kramer reading.
Did you guys want me to do the reading?
Yeah, that'd be
if
great.
you have
man.
it there.
Thank you.
All right. So the reading is Renewed by Joyce Kramer. It's a longtime great Unity minister. Renewed. I open the door of my mind to greater understanding, deeper insight, and new inspiration. You have an open mind? Or are you stuck in outdated mental, emotional patterns? Life moves onward and upward, and we must move with it. If we haven't changed our thoughts and feelings in the last year, we are making life unnecessarily difficult. Growth in understanding ourselves is essential to enjoying a more effective, Christ-like life, just as physical growth is necessary for a baby to mature into an adult. Keep an open mind. Be willing to consider and examine fresh concepts. Do things in a different way. Try something new each day. Willingness to learn will assure you of growth because God can speak to you through your open mind. The Spirit of God will inspire you, guide you, and fill your life with good. Be renewed in the spirit of your mind. That last piece is from Ephesians 4:23 for those who like to know the address.
That's beautiful, man.
Well, that goes perfectly with our topic, but
You know the Bible reading from last week that you weren't here for that episode, but I want to just throw this out. I've been using it all week. It's very simple. Rejoice always.
yes.
Rejoice always. Like whatever, I've been using that a
Always.
lot. Like when my mind shifts into affirming what I don't want, I realize by principle, there's a lot for me to rejoice about now. And if I can just get myself onto that frequency, rejoice always. The law of adjustment will start to go to work and things will start to line up in better than expected ways. Jim Gaither, we got a story for you.
About you.
Yeah, so struggling to make ends meet, the newly ordained Jim Gaither was livid when he confronted his wife with the receipt of a $250 dress she had bought.
This is from when he was younger, right?
You're the one who
newly
found it in
ordained?
the newspaper. Yes,
Newly ordained. Okay, so this is from years ago.
years ago.
All right. So his
So he's confronted his wife with the receipt for a $250 dress she had bought.
how could you do this?
Wife explained,
I was outside the store looking at the dress in the window, and then I found myself trying it on. It was like Satan was whispering in my ear, "You look fabulous in that dress. Buy it."
Jim reminded her.
Well, you know how I deal with that kind of temptation? I say, "Get behind me, Satan."
His wife replied,
I did. But then he said, "It looks fabulous from back here, too."
Yeah, true story, guys. True story.
oh my gosh. Well,
That's
bring
funny.
this out in the
Yeah.
words of Olivia Newton-John, the original lyrics.
To the metaphysical. It was originally, "Let's get metaphysical."
Out there, you could pray for us on this one.
Okay.
I'm praying
And all the things that I know I'll like, making good conversation. I gotta imagine you just right. You know what I mean.
I went into an intimate restaurant, then to a suggestive movie.
There's nothing left to talk about unless it's affirmatively metaphysical.
Metaphysical. I want it metaphysical. Let's get metaphysical. Let me hear your godly talk. Your godly talk. Let me hear your godly talk.
Visit DarrellandEd.com to find easy links to everything we do. And thanks for being a part of Funniest Thing with Darrell and Ed.
Metaphysical. Metaphysical. I want it metaphysical. Let's get metaphysical. Let me hear your godly talk. Your godly talk. Let me hear your godly talk. All right. Woohoo! We did it, everyone. Thank you all.
Jim, thank you so much. It was so great to meet you. I know Nancy and everyone, when they hear this, they're going to be blown away, and we're excited to have you back. Man, this was a real pleasure, and thank you so much. I learned so much. Thank you.
Hey, you don't like music? Said that was awful. Keep it up. Thank you.
Best compliment we've ever got.
We agree, and we love you all out there in YouTube land and podcast land. All right, Jim Gaither, we'll talk to you soon. God bless you.
All right. God bless you.
Thank
Love ya.
you.
Bye.